This is another episode of Doug Has Questions. If you enjoy the conversation you're listening to today, please like it, share it with your friends, subscribe, anything that help us share with us with other like-minded people. If you have any ideas on, or if you would like to help sponsor this program in any way, please send an email to douglas@doughasquestions.com. We'd be love to have that conversation with you. And you can find this on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So please share this with your friends if you're enjoying the conversation. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Doug Has Questions. Today, I am joined by Rick Dunning, commercial airline captain for Delta Airlines, and he got his commercial airplane flying start here in Haynes, Alaska for LAB and then Haynes Flying Service. And he's also married into the Haas family with his wife Kay, and now they reside in Minnesota, but they come back each summer. And I wanted to talk to Rick today about his experiences flying in Southeast Alaska and also flying for the legendary Leighton A. Bennett.
LAB.
So, welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Doug. Glad to be with you.
And before we get into the flying, let's go back a little bit. You grew up in Indiana, correct?
Way northwest corner of Indiana, getting flight instructor at Gary, Indiana.
How old were you when you first developed a passion for flying?
My dad bought a little airplane, a little four-seater, when I think I was 15 years old. So that introduced me to the airport, little one-runway airport in Lansing, Illinois. And that was my first job, was as a line boy, gassing and oiling airplanes. 15 years old. I used to ride my bike a couple miles from my house out to the airport every afternoon after school.
So this is a small private airfield, and
yeah,
your dad decided he wanted to become a pilot? Or
my dad had always been a pilot, but
Okay.
then business and time and money kind of diverge. You know, he had to run the business. So when I got to be, I'm the third of four kids. When I got to be of age 14, 15, he had time to get back into flying again, which was always kind of a back passion. And so he bought a little airplane, a little Cessna 182, like flying out of here. And that got me introduced to the airport and the whole vibe of the pilots and the airplane owners and the jobs out there and stuff. And I just loved flying airplanes right from the beginning.
So when did you go through ground school, and when did you start your flight school? How old were you when you started that aspect of it?
My dad used a carrot and a stick. He was an engineer, chemical engineer, probably the smartest guy I've ever known. And so he baited me with good grades. I could get flight lessons. Okay, so for every ABC or whatever I got, I could get a couple hours of flight lessons out at the airport. So that was probably 15 when I started flying. And, as you know, we may touch on a little later on here. I'm not the best student. I'm not a really good test taker. So I didn't get a lot of lessons in those first couple of years. So some real passionate kids can solo on their 16th birthday. I think, or maybe they get their license on their 16th birthday, but that wasn't me. So I finally got my license in high school. Just before I graduated high school, I got my private pilot's license. And then went off to a college, Embry Riddle Aeronautic University, right after high school. I graduated in 79 and went there January of 80. Was when I really started formal.
And where were they located?
There's two campuses. One's in Daytona Beach, that's an old campus, and the other one was Prescott, Arizona, which is just north of Phoenix and south of Flagstaff.
I was thinking that'd be much better weather to be practicing flying in the wintertime in January. Rather
They
than
advertise
Indiana.
like 360 flying days a year. One of the competitors to Embry Riddle is UND, University of North Dakota, which is in Grand Forks, North Dakota. You're probably familiar with that.
Been there.
Not 360 flying days a year. That place is cold in the winter and blows and it's miserable. But so that's when I really started hard time flying. Was it 1980 out at Embry Riddle out in Arizona.
So going from you've got your private license. You're going there. When you graduate from there, did you graduate from Embry Riddle?
No.
No? But you got enough. Did you get enough hours for your commercial license? And was that your main goal? Is to just
get your hours so you could get your commercial ticket?
No, Embry Riddle was a full-fledged 4-year university. Most guys that go there, they'll get their bachelor's degree in aeroscience, management, that kind of thing. And then you'll get, as you go along, you take your flight classes and get your ratings during the 4.5 years that you're there. I only spent 1 year at Embry Riddle. Part of it was cost. It was pretty expensive to go to school there. And the others was grades, which I wasn't getting the grades to justify the cost. So I left there after 1 year. Got my commercial pilot's license there and a multi-engine instructor license. No, my multi-engine commercial probably I got there, but not my instructor licenses yet. Those came a couple years later.
And when you went there, and at this point, is your goal to be flying jets? Or is that was the goal? We're at some point, Rick Dunning's going to be a captain of a jet airplane.
Jets, but my vision wasn't towards the airlines. There's really three tracks. You can go airlines, you can go military, or you can go corporate flying. Those are the kind of three tracks that most guys will take. When I came off of the little airport, I became familiar with a lot of corporations, like you would be familiar with 3M, IBM, General Motors, Ford's, all those kind of companies. They had flight departments. So that's the kind of people that I was mixing with in Gary when I was flying in and out of Gary. And so that was my vision, was to be a corporate pilot. One pilot, two pilots, one airplane, keep it nice and clean. You're kind of like a taxi driver, but there's a lot of pride in the airplane that you fly and serving, the CEOs or whoever's in the back of the airplane. So that's what I was mostly involved with, and that's where I had pictured myself going, was to be a corporate pilot. It wasn't until years later when I got into LAB and then just blended into Horizon that put me on a track to the commercial side and away from the corporate side. But yeah, when I went through Embry Riddle, I was still looking at being a corporate pilot, because I kind of like that personal interaction, the communications and the dealing with your clients, so to speak, as opposed to what's obviously in the airline, which is just a giant bus driver.
So now you're leaving Embry Riddle after a year. What was your next step from there?
It was kind of getting my learning some hard life lessons. When you get, all of a sudden, I was told by the dean of students, you should probably pick a different career. And to be told that was kind of a hit. I didn't really ever expect that. I didn't think anybody would ever tell me that. I love flying. That's all I want to do is go fly airplanes. And here's the guy, dean of students at Embry Riddle, saying, you should probably pick a different career path. I'm like, well, I don't have a different career path. This is A, B, and C is aviation. So I didn't have another plan for January of '81. So I went to visit my dad in California. I lived with him for a little bit, tried to get myself together. I worked in a retail grocery store for a little bit, tried to go back to school a little bit out there in California, and that didn't all come together. So I was getting kind of lost, kind of drifting around, not real sure. It was a short period of time, just a matter of months. But I was like, I don't know what I want to do if I can't fly airplanes. What am I going to do? How am I going to get back into aviation? And right myself, get myself back on track. So I happen to know some guys that I met at Embry Riddle that were down now flying corporate for King Ranch down there in Texas.
Yeah.
He was flying a King Air for King Ranch, and this was early '82, so the economy was still going pretty good in the oil industry. Late '80. 81, 82 was still pretty good. So there was an opportunity to walk on to one of those corporate flying jobs, kind of like what he was doing, flying a twin-engine turboprop for King Ranch. I go, I could do that. And I had good connections with him, so I just moved from California with my dad, moved down to Houston, which is not the nicest place that I've ever lived in my life. And I lived down there for a couple of months. Got my flight instructor rating, which is important and is another avenue to start building hours again towards the next job. And I lived there until the summer of '82, spring of '82, I think. It was an abrupt turn of events with my friends down there in Houston, and I no longer had roommates, and so I'm out of a job, out of a apartment. The economy was starting to sour in Texas with the oil industry, so that was another whack to go home. And I went home to Indiana, back to where I originally started flying, and got a flight instructor job there from my old boss, and lived with my mom for another couple of months to try to right my ship again, right? As long as, like I tell kids all the time, as long as you don't do anything horrific, police records, terrible accidents, guys particularly, there's always time, right? We may be years later or, other things might transpire, but there's always a chance that you can right your ship and move on from whatever kind of hole we've dug in the past. And I was digging a pretty good hole at Embry Riddle, deep hole in Houston. And so I went home to my mom's house. They were divorced. My folks were divorced. Broke, my tail between my legs, and my old employer gave me a job back. And so I was able to work for him for a couple of months, got flight instructing again, and started flying again.
How was that going home? Because you probably left thinking, I'm not coming back until I'm a pilot. Mm-hmm. You've got these aspirations. Everybody knew you probably had those dreams and aspirations. Mm-hmm. And coming back and going to your former boss, that hit you pretty hard? Was that tough to do? Or did you just know in order to get where you want to go, this is a necessary step to get there?
It wasn't pleasant going back, coming full circle, right? When I last left all these people, I was going to Embry Riddle, a big prestigious aviation university, and my career is going to take off. And now I'm coming back. I'm broke. I'm unemployed. My tail's between my legs, and just trying to right my ship again. But they've also been in the airline industry. It's very cyclical, as we could talk about later. And a lot of these guys that I flew with early had gotten on with the airlines, and then because of recessions or whatever, they lost their jobs. And now they're back at the jobs that they did earlier, flying little airplanes, flight instructing, that kind of stuff. It's just part of the cycle, so they understand that it's kind of the price you pay for getting into aviation. Aviation's very cyclical. It's a very difficult industry. It's probably no more difficult than running a retail store.
So the people that you were back there with, and they knew how tough it was to get to that next step. And so was that an encouraging group to be around, that they were giving you that kind of feedback?
They were a really good group. Yeah, they were very supportive. Nobody was looking down on me. Nobody was telling me to choose a different career path. They were all supportive of just do what you got to do, right? Take the next step. You get to the next thing. The aviation is based on a lot of your promotions. Next jobs are based on hours. That's why you go from a flight instructor to different things. Years ago, we used to fly canceled checks at night. When there was paper checks, that was a good business. Flying little freight boxes was another way to build time. And so that was you just do the next thing, right? You make yourself available. You send out a bunch of applications. You get these hours. You get the next 1,000 hours. You get the next 1,000 hours. And then based on the economy, right, the airline has to be moving forward to have a hiring cycle.
Yeah.
But then once you hit that, and then you move on. And so they're like, okay, well, what are you going to do next? You just got to bear down, flight instruct for a little while till the next better job comes available.
So what do you think it would have been like if your professor would have understood that? The one that told you need to get another job or look at a different profession? I'm
really close friends with, even though I spent a year at Embry Riddle, very close friends with a couple of those guys that I started with as freshmen, and I talk about that a lot, about how their life. One guy went to the military, one guy went to the FAA, and another guy who came up here to LAB with me. We ended up meeting at Delta again. And we've been in touch all these years, but so we ended up retiring as Delta pilots. But my life, I can't imagine what my life would have been like if he had encouraged me to stay, to buckle down, go to summer school, get some help with my physics classes. I have no idea, but I know I wouldn't have come to LAB. I wouldn't have come to Haynes. And I'll be the first to admit that my whole life changed the day Leighton offered me a job, and I moved to Haynes, Alaska.
How long was that after you had been back in Indiana?
It was September of '82 I came up here, so I think,
Okay.
I got to do the math, I think I was in Indiana for about a year, 81 into 82. And so I was flight instructing down there off of Gary Airport at the time. And the lower 48's economy was kind of in a recession. So that corner of northwest Indiana is very heavily steel mill. And so there's a lot of discretionary income with those high-paying, moderately skilled, steel mill. So those guys have a lot of discretionary income when the steel mills are hiring. At this time, the steel mills were kind of slacking off, U.S. Steel and all those. So the flight instructing wasn't going so good. The prospects of getting a corporate job in the Chicago area weren't going so well. So in around September of '82, I looked at this giant catalog of aviation jobs that we have. It's in every office in the airlines. And I looked at 25 places that I thought would be fun to fly. Like here I am in Indiana, right? So just about anything's better than flying in Indiana. Like the Caribbean, Hawaii, maybe some Arizona, California, that kind of stuff. And one address was for LAB Flying Service in Haynes, Alaska. And so I sent one of my 25 resumes came out to here, and I only had 800 hours or so total flight time. And this guy, Leighton, called me collect
Of course he
to
did.
my house in Indiana, and we accepted the call. And he told me if I could come up here to Haynes and pass his check ride, that he'd give me a job flying Cherokees if I thought I could fly Cherokees. Well, I was still 21 and still arrogant enough to think that I could fly any airplane, right? Just put me in a seat and I could figure it out, right? So, and I'd flown some Cherokees back home. It's not a very unique airplane. So I said, this was a Sunday night. He wanted me up there midweek. And I thought, let me ask some of my friends. So I went to my dad and asked my dad, because they'd just done a cruise up here in '80 and loved it. I go, Dad, so this guy's going to offer me a job up in Southeast Alaska to come up in September. And he goes, boy, that sounds like a lot of fun, but September's late in the season. You'll probably, work a month or two, and then you'll be out of a job again. You might as well just stay down there with Joe, the air taxi that I was with before, and you'll find something and we'll come along. I go, yep, that makes good sense. Thanks. I'll talk to my boss, Joe. So I go into his office. I go, hey, Joe, this is a guy I've known since I was 14, highly respected guy in the industry, a really good friend of mine, plus he's my boss. I go, Joe, this guy in Alaska is calling me up, wants to give me a job flying Cherokees. And he goes, well, that'd be a lot of fun, because he'd flown up here in Alaska, trips and stuff. He goes, that'd be a lot of fun, but late summer, it's not in the cards, right? What are you going to do? You're going to work there a little bit, and then they're going to shut down and lay everybody off. He goes, yeah. I said, yeah, Joe, that's same thing my dad said. That makes a lot of sense. So I went home, thought about it, probably prayed over it a little bit, called Leighton back up, said, Leighton, I'm coming up. I got no idea where Haynes, Alaska is.
The two people you respect asked for the opinion, both told you don't do it.
Well,
and you're like, yeah, no, I'm going to do this anyhow.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always tell my kids, if you don't want the answer, don't ask the question.
Yep.
Well, I learned that later on in life, but I go,
So you pretty much had your mind made up you were going to take the
I was
job.
going to go. Yeah. I was 21 years old, didn't have girlfriends. I didn't have any debt. I had a 280Z, living with my with my mom at home. There's nothing tying me here, Indiana, and so what's more exciting than go fly airplanes up in Alaska, So I bought some winter clothes at Sears Roebuck or wherever I was, and jumped on a flight. Flew to Seattle, flew to Juneau. Had no idea where I was going. We had encyclopedias back then, looking for Alaska, and I'm like, I'm going somewhere near Juneau. And a couple of days later, I flew into Juneau, and it was a spectacular September day. And then I waited.
And you were thinking, oh, this isn't going to be bad.
No, this mountains. 'Cause I had flown briefly in and out of Colorado, on a trip in or out, or California in or out. Like, oh yeah, mountains are cool. But I had no idea what I was getting into here. So I'm down in the Juneau airport, new LAB guy, and waiting for the next flight to Haynes to go meet Layton. And so back in the day, there used to be a bar upstairs in the Juneau airport with a nice restaurant and stuff. And you go wait around up there until next flight up to Haynes. You go up to Haynes and meet Layton. So I go upstairs, and I find in the bar is a TV, and they're watching a Cub game. Well, what's better than a kid from Chicago to sit in a bar and watch the Cubs play on TV while you're waiting for your flight? Yeah. So I'm up there having a burger, watching the Cubs in a bar, not drinking, of course. And somebody from the office downstairs comes upstairs and in a huff, because no LAB pilots are going to be found in a bar.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're going to be in a bar, you're not going to last here very long. Get downstairs, you're going to fly to Haynes. So I was like, wow, welcome to LAB, right?
Can't even watch the Cubs.
Can't even watch. I got the Cubs on TV. Don't you understand how cool that is? Well, little do I know, that's like the only TV that they have. And
yep.
It's like, it's only sports, only TV. So here I'm in Juneau, and I'm already getting my knuckles wrapped by some agent down there behind the counter. And then I fly to Haynes, and it's just the most beautiful flight. I'll never forget it. Flying up the canal in a Cherokee 6 or something like that with some guy that doesn't have a map. He's just flying back and forth, and it's like, you don't have a map? Because we all fly with maps down south, right? You got this charred map on your lap. And nope.
You just drop your leg.
Yep.
It's just blocking the microphone a little bit.
He goes, nope, you're not going to fly with maps up here. If you need a map, you're behind. And no maps. So you'll learn like your driveway, like your street to school, like your street to the grocery store. You'll learn this place. And I'm looking at all these mountains and rivers and bays and glaciers. Just like when I flew up here, I don't know, I flew up here last on whoever. My nose is on the window, and I'm looking outside, and I'm looking at the boats, and I'm still looking at the glaciers, and I'm still looking in Berners Bay, and I'm still pointing to Endicott River and over the Davidson. It was like that 40 years ago when I came here. Whenever it was, I came here 42 years ago. Like, I just love looking outside.
On a Bluebird day, I don't know if there's a nicer flight in the world.
No.
It is amazing.
This place is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It's the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when I'm flying a Delta jet, most of the time I like to go out west, and I just love to look out the window. The Grand Canyons, Colorado, New Mexico, Four Corners, going to Vancouver. It's just beautiful.
Yep.
Flying around the country. I love looking outside the window. And it started when I came up here in 82. Unbelievable.
So what was your first impression when you met Layton? So the people that don't know Layton, World War II fighter pilot.
B-17 guy.
B-17.
Yep.
Came up, started his own airline in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Flew the pipeline from Haynes to Fairbanks, checking for leaks.
Yep.
It was one of his jobs, and just started out of Haynes and built an amazing business over the years.
Yeah, I don't know when exactly he came down from the interior, he and Lou,
Mm-hmm.
right, and the three boys would have come down here sometime from the interior. I don't know when exactly that was, because other people may or may not know that there was a tank farm here in Haynes, and the tank farm took deliveries of oil, fuel oil, different levels of oil, and that's what actually brought my father-in-law to Haynes. So that oil was pumped from the tank farm in Haynes a small pipeline up to the interior. And so Leighton, I guess, flew that line to check for leaks. And that's what got him started here. And then, of course, back then, Alaska Airlines was flying, after the float planes were gone, they transitioned to Twin Otters, I believe, and they would make like 2 or 3 round trips a day, I guess. And Leighton decided to come in with his Cherokees and probably make, in the summer, 5, 6, 7 flights a day. Much better service, reliable service, local guy. Ran an airline like nobody else ran an airline, certainly not like they do now. And ran Alaska Airlines out of the canal. Mm-hmm. So, but, probably Alaska probably doesn't care. They're probably glad they're done with it. But, yeah, he started a business, giving good, reliable service. But my first impression of Leighton, man, he yells. Everything he does, he yells. He yells at you. He yells at you when he's praising you. He yells at you when he's upset with you. He yells at you when he wants to go out and play.
Yep.
He just yells. And I can picture him to this day. The LEB office, which used to be a 1-story office, now it's 2. He'd come walking. He and Lou lived in the back, and he'd come walking out of the back. He'd have a coat on. He'd have a sandwich, half a sandwich in his mouth. His boot had half a pant leg was untucked. He'd come walking around, and he'd be yelling something. Who's flying? Who's doing here? What do you got going here? He'd yell at the desk, the schedulers. He'd yell at the pilots. He was kind of abrupt.
Yes, he was.
But highly respected.
Absolutely.
And loved.
Yep.
We really loved flying with him because he didn't turn our careers around because most of us were college kids. A lot of them came up from Southern California, like the San Jose State kind of guys. They have a good flying program. They would come up there in the summers, and they would leave at the end of summer to go back to school. And that's what led to an opening for me in September to come up here and fly, is because they had too many guys leaving. Mm-hmm. So he really gave our careers a boost. Leighton did, coming up here and flying, hard flying. Flew 6 days a week. And
he turned a lot of his pilots into commercial captains, didn't he?
Yep. There's commercial guys, airline guys all over the world that flew for LAB.
In the years.
Yep. I was here in '82. There's a group of guys that were just leaving here, early '82, that went to Delta, United, Continental, American. Atlas guys have come through here. Countless guys. Flying all over the world. Flying. Yep. Big heavy iron.
And I think that's the thing. We all have our stories about how kind of rough and gruff he was and everything. And I think he had a reputation for being hard on guys, but if you put up with it and if you listen to him and learn from him, mm-hmm. It was the best education you can get.
Yeah.
As far as becoming a commercial pilot.
Yeah, it was multiple things. You're building a lot of time, and like I said earlier, hours is your next job level. So you're building a lot of time, and you're flying in really tough conditions. So when you left LAB, you had a reputation of flying in really harsh conditions, mm-hmm. And you didn't have a chip on your shoulder, but you had something to be proud of. Certainly more so than the guys that stayed in lower 48 and flight instructed, which an hour, it's just not the same. Flying up and down the canal or out to the coast, it's just not the same as flight instructing for an hour. Mm-hmm. Not that that's easy. This was really tough. So when you went outside, like when we went to Horizon Air next, people in the Northwest knew LAB and LAB pilots and flying in Southeast and Alaska in general. It's a really hard time flying. And if you got out of here with your certificates intact, you had a great opportunity to go wherever you wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. And, so you came up here with 800 hours
mm-hmm.
after you were with LAB for 2 years before you went to Haynes Airways?
No, it kind of bounced around a little bit. went from here 82 to 83. I was with LAB, flew the whole winter there in 82. And then November of 83, I went down south to another little commuter airline based out in Iowa called American Central Airlines, where, again, I had a connection of a guy that got me a job there. They were flying the next level up multi-engine airplanes, which is the next level of flying that you want to get, the multi-engine time. And I went there in late 83 and spent a year there. Because you remember, I don't have a college degree. I'm building time, but I don't have a college degree. So this wasn't just your entry-level job. This was your low-level job. This was an airline where you was not pleasant to work for, but you built a lot of time. So it taught me that I don't want to stay at this kind of level of airline the rest of my career. I need to get a college degree. Maybe not a 4-year degree, but I've got to get something that checks that box, college educated, because that's the next thing that the airlines are looking for. There's very few guys in the major airlines today that don't have 4-year degrees. I'm probably one of a handful at Delta that maybe don't have a 4-year degree, but I have a 2-year degree. So going to this low-rent multi-engine operation in Iowa taught me that this is the career I want. Now, again, I've got to go back and figure out what's going to make it better. What the next step is to get a degree, a 2-year degree at least. I can do that, right? I can buckle down and get a 2-year degree. So my girlfriend, Kay Haas.
So you met Kay your first time in Alaska, that first winter here?
Yep, I met her December of 82. She was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
You were 8th grade in 82?
82, I was in 6th grade.
6th grade.
Yeah.
So a big event here, of course, we don't fly at night in Southeast because we're all day VFR. So on a Friday night, you got 2 guys living in the swamp. It's dark early in December, right? It gets dark early, so we don't fly.
What's the swamp?
The swamp, the swamp is this LAB pilot dump of a house that we stayed in for free. It was part of our pay.
The 2-story house, looking over the water. The view is good. You looked over the water right off of 2nd Avenue. It's hence been destroyed.
Yeah, it burned down years ago. Well, you say it's 2-story, you're generous. It had a basement, which had a prison, right? There was a jail cell down there. And
seriously? I didn't know there
yeah.
was a prison down there.
Yeah, there was a jail cell down there. The main floor...
Did you still have the keys for that? Or was the
No.
door taken off of that? I can just imagine with the pilots that have come through here, if there's keys for that, the mayhem that would have ensued having to jail.
It was, and then whatever was in the basement, it was a jail cell down there for whatever reason. And then the main floor had a kitchen, had a living room, had a swinging front door, no lock, no latch, no nothing. Had a bedroom that was a sun porch, kind of, call it the refrigerator, and it had 2 rooms in the back that had heat. And so we stayed in the rooms in the back. The swamp was nicknamed from the MASH, TV show MASH, and it had various stickers and posters that probably wouldn't be allowed anymore. But the furniture in this place was back seats of the LAB van with a sheet on it, and that was the living room furniture. 1 TV in there in this nasty kitchen. So the Haynes pilots lived in the swamp. There was one guy that lived in Hoona. He lived in some kind of LAB housing in Hoona. And then the guys that were based in Juneau lived in Bart's trailer, or Bart's condo. I think he had a condo or a trailer. They had something down there, a couple of pilots. And those were the 3 LAB bases. So John and I were up here in the winter of 82, and we had the basketball tournaments. You remember a bunch of teams would come to town, and there would be all these basketball tournaments. Well, like I said before, LAB pilots can't hang out at bars, and we could eat in the restaurants, but there's really not much more to do. Watch TV. So we went to a basketball game, and couldn't tell you who was playing, but was a Friday evening, and Kay was the trumpet playing mascot for the Haynes Glacier Bears, and she was 17 years old, and then I took to her right away. I thought she was really cute and be fun to get to know. So down in lower 48, you don't experience this, but after a basketball game, football game, everybody gets together at somebody's house, and there's a party somewhere, right? And you do whatever you do in high school, and there may be beers involved, or this and that, or cars. So I asked her, I go, what are you guys going to do after the basketball game? Is there a party or something like that around? She goes, man, maybe, but she's going to go home and bake cookies for the bake sale, which is tomorrow. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Isn't this cool? So, okay. So, of course, we go home that night, and then I'm sure enough, I'm at the high school. The next day at the base school, I'm buying some darn cookies. Yeah. So that's when I met her. Yeah. And I kind of tried to date her for a while. And then a little bit later, I finally convinced her through one of her friends who got their car stuck in a ditch. I helped push her out of the ditch.
Push her out of the ditch?
If she'd get me a date with Kay.
So if she didn't promise to get you a date with Kay, were you just going to leave her in the ditch?
I would have left her.
You would have left her?
Probably would have left her. Because that's LAB guys. We're just a bunch of not well respected kids in the community. Yeah. So left here in late 82. Kay was at Willamette. Mm-hmm. And so we were dating. We'd been dating for a year or two, I guess. And so I went to a junior college in Salem, Oregon, where Willamette was. And through her help and encouragement, struggled through a 2-year degree down there. So finally I got that. And then a friend of ours at LAB, who had since quit, he and Mary, Reggie Radliff, were starting Haynes Airways. So he called me up out of the blue and asked me if I wanted to be the chief pilot for Haynes Airways. I think this was the spring of 85. I think so. Haynes Airways was starting up. They may probably already operating, but they needed a chief pilot. And so I agreed to do that. So we came up here, Kay and I came up here the summer of 85. We helped start Haynes Airways. Went back down, finished my degree the fall of 85, came back spring of 86, and flew another year for Haynes Airways. Mm-hmm. Kay and I got married here summer of 86. And then she went on to her senior year of college at Willamette. And then that fall I went to Horizon Airlines. Okay. So I'd finally had enough time from LAB to flying for American Central, getting a lot of multi-engine time, and then coming back here and flying for basically a year and a half or so for Haynes Airways, and getting my 2-year degree now, and being a chief pilot at an airline, which they don't know the difference between Haynes Airways or any other airline, mm-hmm. right? To have been a chief pilot at an airline is a resume builder, and so that got me qualified to fly for Horizon Air in the fall of 86.
So you based out of Seattle then with that, or where did you get?
We didn't have a Seattle base then. We had Portland and Boise.
Okay.
And so I interviewed out of Portland and did my training in Portland. Got assigned to a Metroliner, which is the 18-seat. We call them a San Antonio sewer tube because it's just a long, skinny airplane with one seat on each side that nobody in their right mind would pay good money to ride in behind two 20-year-old pilots. But they did. They paid a lot of money to fly behind us, and God willing, it was a really good job. So we got based in Boise.
So was that before Alaska Airlines bought Horizon then? Was that pre-merger?
Actually, yeah, very good question. When I was hired at Horizon, this was November of 86, Horizon was a code share with United Airlines. Mm-hmm. When I'm in school, which classrooms for the 4 of us new hire pilots, Alaska Airlines bought Horizon Air. So it was a big celebration. It was really going to be a big deal for Horizon Air to be owned by Alaska Airlines. It was going to help them out considerably financially, route structure-wise, a huge feed for Alaska Airlines to feed all the Pacific Northwest small cities. And it was a big boost for Alaska. It was really a win-win. It was wonderful.
Yeah, you look at the way that those two operate now, like you said, with that feeder system right into that, it works great for both of them.
Yep. And in that time, there was a lot of airline mergers in the 86s. The TWAs, the Ozarks, bunch of other, AirCal, PSA, a bunch of those other airlines, all got bought up and merged into bigger airlines. A lot of leveraged buyouts. A lot of turmoil in the airline industry back then, but it really helped Alaska and Horizon. So that was a big boost. So I got onto Horizon really at a good time.
And what routes were you flying for Horizon?
In and out of Boise, initially as a co-pilot, we flew Salt Lake, Portland, Seattle's, Spokane's. We opened up Montana, so that was Great Falls, Kalispell, Missoula, Helena. What else did we do?
So with those northwest, Boise, Montana areas and things like that, Salt Lake City, do you think that flying for LAB better prepared you for winter conditions in some of those places when you're flying Lynn Canal in the winter? Is that similar to back there, or with the water, does that change? How's that difference between those two locations?
A big difference because at LAB...
It's also different planes, I understand that, but I didn't know if just the weather conditions were similar in any way.
Not really, because at LAB we're all flying during the day in visual conditions, right? You can see out. Now we had tricks, ways that Leighton taught us to fly in bad weather, how to protect ourselves, right, in visual conditions. Never fly in the clouds, never trust your instruments because they were never maintained. So you just knew that going in, right? That's the way LAB airplanes were. They were reliable, but the instruments never worked. So that was good. We never flew in clouds. When you go to Horizon, now you're flying sophisticated multi-engine airplanes, 2 pilot crews, full de-ice, anti-icing equipment, full grounds crews, that will fuel the airplane, load the bags, check people in, all that kind of stuff. At LAB, we used to come into the office, and the scheduler, dispatcher, would hand you a list or tell you who's on your flight. So we would get in the van, and we would go over and pick up old routes. We'd go down across, a beach, turn up north, outside a beach, across from Katzik's house, and you pick up, this guy. And then you go down outside the fort, you go to the little green house on the corner, that's June Haas's house, right? You go up Piedad Road past, X's house, and you get this guy. And so we would do this. We would drive around to all these places. No, roads didn't have hardly names, right? It was always across the street from somebody's house. And then you'd pick up all these people, we'd go up to their porch, we'd schlep their bags, or we'd pick them up in the bars. We'd pick them up at the Fog Cutter or the Dan Barb's or wherever it was, the Pioneer. We'd drive them out to the airport. We'd schlep their bags in the back of an airplane, have them walk up, climb in, give them the safety briefing. We'd fly them down to Juneau and then get another people, and we'd bring them back up here, and we'd take all them people to their houses and then go back to the office and find out where we're going next. And if you're friends with the dispatcher, you'd get a good airplane and good routes. And if you're on her bad side, like I upset Kay, I would get the junk airplane and I'd go get stuck somewhere and fly some piece of crap. The old Cherokee 6 that she would do. So it's completely different. Very sophisticated airplanes, all-weather capabilities, radar controls, instrument approaches. It's just a completely different kind of flying. Maybe your patience, are not worn so thin up there because you're used to being very flexible here in the canal. You're either going to go or you're going to try it. And if you don't get through, you come back. You turn around and come back. 100 times we'd fly down out of here, get to Berners Bay, can't cross Berners Bay. You try to go over to the west side of the canal, see if there's a break over there. You get through, you can't get through. You come back. All these times we do weather turnarounds or whatever, it cost Leighton money, but he would never question you. He would never doubt your judgment as a pilot. And he always used to say, the passengers here out of Haynes particularly, they know this canal better than you do as a new pilot here. So they know if you're scared, they know if you're cheating, they know if you're doing something where you shouldn't be, because then they'll come back and they'll talk to Leighton, and that'll be the last time you ever fly for LAB. So, especially in and out of Haynes, which John and I were based here, you mind your P's and Q's. Never hung around in bars, never BS the passengers, never pushed bad weather. The people that lived here, that knew it, they knew that sometimes they don't make it, and they'll just wait till later.
Growing up here, I've flown the canal a lot, as you're referring to. And there's times when you can tell somebody's a new pilot when you're in the canal and bad weather comes and what they're doing. You're just sitting in the back seat going, I hope he figures this out quick.
Yeah.
Because he's not really making the right decisions right now.
No. And one thing that Leighton did early on, and did it with all his pilots, he started you like a baby, and you flew routes, just Juneau to Haynes, Haynes to Skagway. You stayed close. You stayed in good weather. The dispatchers, all knew that you were new. They knew your limitations. They know when to, how to push you or not push you. And so you started out with little steps, good weather. And then weather got bad, then they'd sit you. You wouldn't fly for a little bit. And then once you got familiar with Hoonah, right, which is crossing over icy straits, then they would open that up to you. Gustavus, they'd open that up to you. Going farther down south, Sitka, Ketchikan, those kind of routes, going out to Dry Bay. They started you small. Leighton was very close. He started you small, watched you, made sure you knew what you were doing, where you were going. The weather, that they would monitor that when they put you out in it. We were on a pretty tight leash. And that was another way that we really respected Leighton, is he didn't just hire us and throw us out to the wolves. He had his reputation in Haynes, particularly that, then in the 80s, that all his pilots were very well respected, and his as an airline was very well run. So that was a good part. That was good. Going down south, people have a different expectations of when airlines are going to make it. Get the flights through. They think that it's like a Greyhound service and they're always going to make it and things. And they get upset. They get verbally upset, when you don't make it, and you turn around, and that's just the way it goes sometimes in the weather.
I used to get upset when they'd tell me a flight was canceled or was delayed. Just younger, and I don't remember when the switch flipped in, that knowing enough people, or knowing some of them I didn't know well, but that have died in a plane crash. Yeah, it's I don't know, I don't have any wood to knock on here. I don't want to jinx anybody, but with a lot of the technology they have in the planes now, running into that bad weather is less of an issue than it used to be. But Alaska's pretty unforgiving.
It is. That's the term I was going to use. It's very unforgiving, not only in the airplanes, but on the water.
On the water,
the fishermen,
everything you can do.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing, that being a hard-headed Scandinavian, that took me a while. That was like, okay, if this is in my best interest. If they decide we're not going to go, they're making a good judgment call, and I can find something else to do. Whatever I needed to do, whether it's in Juneau or back home in Haynes, I can do that another time. But I'd rather just stay home.
And we'll get people. I fly the Airbus, and we'll get people maybe not first-time flyers, because there are not a lot of people that haven't flown jets before, but they're nervous flyers. And we welcome them. We welcome kids into the cockpit, and we certainly welcome nervous flyers. And I'm more than willing to sit and talk with them and tell them that I have a family. I have a wife that I want to go home to. I have kids that I want to go home to, right? My life is every bit as valuable as yours. And I'm not going to put myself in a position to jeopardize your life just to get these 180 or 220 people to a destination. And I've had passengers here that have missed cruises or important events, weddings, and I have passengers down in the lower 48 that have missed cruises or weddings because of weather. And I'm not willing to put my life on the line for any other calendar event because I have a loved one I want to come home to too.
Mm-hmm.
And once they realize that, then that puts them at ease. And certainly the people up here realize that the canal is very unforgiving in the air and on the water. And if you live to see another day, that's a win.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So how long were you with Horizon?
2.5 years.
2.5 years? And then your next step from Horizon was?
Went to U.S. Air.
U.S. Air.
Yep.
So is there a reason you went to U.S. Air? Because as you were talking about being there right when Alaska Airlines bought them, it just seems like that natural progression to go into Alaska. Was there no openings at the time and there were U.S. Air?
It would have been perfect,
Yeah.
in my mind. Perfect to go to Alaska Airlines. And I had interviewed there, but they didn't hire me. Part of the reason is, they probably don't like me anyways, but there's a feeder system, right? So Horizon Pilots is its own entity. Horizon Air was, even though it's owned by Alaska. And so they pay a lot of money to train their pilots, so they want them to stay there. So if Alaska hires out of Horizon, they have to pay that person to train them to go up to Alaska. Then they got to pay somebody else to come out of Horizon to fill that shoe. So they're kind of reluctant to pick from their feeder clubs to come up to the main line. They'd rather pick from somebody else's feeder who basically has the same amount of experience and qualifications.
Yeah.
Pick from their feeder to come over here. It doesn't always seem to make sense in my mind. They have a guy that's been working for basically Alaska Air Group for 2.5 years. They know me, right? Well, maybe they don't like me. I don't know. That's their own decision. But I would have thought I would have been a good feed, and to stay here in the Pacific Northwest would have been wonderful. But at the time, it didn't work out. And in the airlines, you kind of go to the first ones that'll hire you, based on that tier of airline that you want to go to, right? So, U.S. Air, American, United, Delta, those were all the kind of airlines that you wanted to go to. And so you sent out those resumes, and U.S. Air was the first one to call.
And
so I went there.
Where were you based out of for U.S. Air?
Charlotte,
North Carolina.
Yeah. So we moved from Portland, Oregon to Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
The southwest or southeast corner of the United States is really beautiful, but it's hot and humid. But U.S. Air was a really going concern back then. Paid very well. Took real good care of its employees. And it was exciting to go there for about 1 year of the 7.5 that I ended up being there.
So what 1 year was great, and the other 6.5 not so much.
Not so good. We had there was a Gulf War that took place early in that time period. Maybe that was 89, so that'd be 90 91-ish.
Yeah.
The Gulf War, and so I got furloughed from my job there at U.S. Air after being there 2 years. I got furloughed for a year, so basically you're unemployed with rights to go back if they need to hire again. Otherwise, there's no guarantee you're going to come back. So, but a lot of other airlines were furloughing at the time, so there wasn't any other jobs around. So, and then when I did go back from year 3. It just wasn't the same airline anymore. They had started to come across hard times economically. Morale was pretty poor there. Between then and when I finally left in 97, we had 5 fatal accidents in 5 years.
Wow.
which is pretty headline grabbing.
Yeah.
And some of them were our fault, U.S. Air fault. Some of them were completely unavoidable. Well, all accidents are avoidable ultimately, but they weren't really our fault. But it just got to be a really tough time to be there.
With that many accidents happening in the same airline, does that erode your confidence when you're getting in the cockpit, in the plane at all?
Not really. When you look at
When you look at what happened,
when
in
you
each
look
one
at
of
what
them?
happens,
Yeah.
each one, one of them, and if I can remember them all, one of them was one of our U.S. Air 737s was landing in L.A. International, and back then the tower controllers had little different rules, and they had put a little commuter, another 18-seater, on the runway to hold its position before takeoff, while they had cleared this U.S. Air airplane to land, and that 18-seater was still on the runway. I think it was at night when the U.S. Air airplane landed right on top of it.
Oh,
And it's just an awful accident, terrible timing, but it was just a bunch of little things went wrong all at the same time. A lot of policies and procedures have changed because of that since then, so that doesn't happen. But that was just one of them. That was a U.S. Air airplane. It was one of the fatal accidents. A couple others were storm related. Some were mechanical related. Yeah, it was a really tough 5 years. So if you take each of those five individually, it doesn't accumulate to poor training, poor management. They're kind of all just different reasons. But it is hard to go to work for a company that's just getting beat up.
Beaten up all
Even
the
if
time.
it's not
Yeah.
all your fault, your airline's fault,
yeah.
and it's not between the two of you, right? Because there's still a lot of confidence between the two of us. It's hard to go to work for an airline that's financially struggling and has just horrible news kind of stuff. So
No, it's got to weigh on this, the frontline people like yourselves that
yeah,
can't imagine.
no, and you get comments from passengers.
Yeah.
Different issues at the time. The media gets involved and they get focused on one thing. Either it's fuel or maintenance or whatever. There was a period when pilots and alcohol, it's always an issue, but that was an issue. So, they would half jokingly stick their head up and make inappropriate comments about our condition and what we did the night before or whatever. It just kind of lends itself to that kind of an attitude, and that gets to be old.
Yeah.
It's part of the industry that has changed a lot over time.
Do you still get the comments like that? I mean, you're not you're not an airline that's going through that, but I didn't know if
No.
that's still, if you're still getting smart aleck comments from people.
No, they
or-
seem to have not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
No.
The reason I'm asking that is you see a lot of news stories that the last couple of years, passenger behavior is not at its highest
Yeah.
level. So I don't know if it's the flight attendants that are mainly having to deal with that, or some of that's directed at,
Well, they
the
do.
pilots as well.
Since 9/11, another tragedy that we had to endure in our career, and it was very difficult. We have Kevlar doors now, right, in the
Yeah.
cockpit. So that adds an extra layer of burden on the flight attendants because there really is next to impossible to encroach on the cockpit anymore. So the flight attendants have to go and deal with this kind of stuff. No longer can you bring the pilot out, right, to be that authority figure to sit somebody down, right? I'm the
Yeah.
captain. You sit down in your chair. You do what you're told, or else something's going to happen. Whenever there's a disturbance in the cabin, we basically go on lockdown, and we don't
Yeah. It's all flight attendants.
interject. So it's all upon the flight attendants and any perhaps able-bodied person that's around there that's willing to step forward and take control.
No air marshals.
We have air marshals, and they are armed, and we know when they're on board. But they also have a job to do with pretty strict guidelines, right? If it's a disturbance in the back that may not rise to a level of getting them out of their chairs, right? It may not just be some drunk guy that's arguing with somebody in their seat back, right? That may not be a level to
Or
get
even
the air
if that's a
marshals out.
distraction to get the air marshal out of the way for
That exposes
somebody
an air
that
marshal,
exposes who they
that
are.
maybe
and-
get something down the line, because we have to think differently now,
Yeah.
right? So the air marshals have a job to do, right? And it's not necessarily being, the drug and alcohol people in the back.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like protecting the cockpit.
So you were at U.S. Air till 97?
Yeah, I came up in January of '97. I got hired by Northwest Airlines.
Northwest Airlines. And we're speaking of 9/11, were you flying that day?
I was scheduled to fly that day. So in our neighborhood, we had a bunch of kids that all went to school together. We happened to live outside the busing district. So I was scheduled to fly. So I was in my uniform, and I was going to do the daddy bus, pick up the kids at the house, take them to school, and then go out to the airport and check in for my flight that was scheduled to fly from Minneapolis to Newark, back to Minneapolis, and then down to Albuquerque, New Mexico that night. And so Kay called me because she's a preschool teacher. They had seen on the news, I wasn't watching the news, of course, in the morning, that there was something going on in New York. And some buildings were coming down and different reasons. So I turned on the TV real quick and I said, wow, this is really bad. But all of the news early on 9/11, a lot of it was wrong, right? There's a lot of speculation early on. And so I figured, don't know what's going on, but I still have a flight to go to, right? Maybe I'm not going to go to Newark because, the real problem's in New York, but I'm probably going to go to Albuquerque because that's what we do. So I ended up going out to the airport, took the kids to school, went out to the airport, and at that time, later on in the morning, all the Northwest employees are all leaving. All the pilots are going home, flight attendants are going home. The whole airline is shut down across the country. Every flight's on the ground, all over. You're not going anywhere. And you can't get a hold of crew scheduling, so you might as well just go home. So in the employee parking lot, I just turned around, went home, and sat at home for the rest of the week, glued to the TV news reports about what was going on. The friends of mine that were flying that day, that landed at the nearest suitable airport, they had a really tough time because they didn't know what was going on. They were in hotels with hundreds of people and just day to day, not knowing when they're going to come home. They might have been packed for a one-day trip, and they ended up spending a week, in some hotel in somewhere.
My sister and I were at a trade show in Reno, and that was a lot of people. Some people drove there. A few people tried to get a rental car and got out real quick. Can't really drive from Reno to Alaska with a rental car. That would have been really expensive. So we just kind of hung out there, and we were on the first flight out of Reno, and the first flight that landed into Seattle.
Where are you?
On the way back. And that was the most tension-filled flight I have ever been on in my life.
Yeah.
And the release of joy when we landed in Seattle and the relief was beyond anything I've ever felt. That was something else.
Yeah, I remember my first flight, I think it was maybe Friday.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first flight after 9/11, and I went from Minneapolis to Orange County. And I thought we would have an airplane full of people that had been trying to get out. And I thought the airport would be full. And it was like now flying during COVID. We had a couple of passengers, and the skies, the air traffic control was just eerily quiet.
Mm-hmm.
It was like nothing I had ever experienced before or expected. It was very weird to fly on that day.
That's interesting. Our flight, both the flight from Reno to Seattle was full, and the flight from Seattle to Juneau was full.
Yeah.
Both of those were totally full.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. But So yeah, you were flying during COVID too.
Yeah.
That was So
COVID
before we get to COVID though, I'm jumping ahead of myself
Mm-hmm.
here. How long do you feel it felt till? I mean, it's nothing's back how it was pre 9/11, but what kind of lag was there before you could kind of sense people were comfortable flying again? That there's this after 9/11.
Oh, that seems like a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. It was
Yeah.
24 years ago. I don't know. And you can just say it was a short
Yeah.
time or a long time, or maybe it wasn't
I
that
don't
long. But
remember there being a point.
a point where you felt like, okay, this is normal again?
Because it never got normal again.
Yeah.
Because the TSA, remember that before 9/11, it was a mishmash
Yep.
of city-owned, airport-owned and operated security. After 9/11, it just became a police state. And it never went back. You know, they have gradually, gone back from red alerts to yellows, and now there's other levels of security that you can go through, lines you can go through, and that maybe you don't have to take your shoes off anymore, but it's just never gotten back. It's never been back to that before. There was a period, now that you mention it, where people did not have a tolerance for other people that didn't look like them in the cabin. And if they were doing something unusual that pre 9/11 you would just blow off, now post 9/11 was they're ringing a flight attendant call button, or they're refusing to go on a flight, and then the pilots would get involved while we're still on the ground. Now there's an issue. This particular group of people is doing something, and that becomes an issue now. So now we've got security on the ground, be it Northwest people or Delta people now have to come on with these security people that have a level of trying to resolve issues between passengers and groups, and
And so that's impacting your pushback time too.
it does.
And
So some of that has kind of tapered off, I guess, if you said people get more comfortable. Some of that tolerance for other groups has certainly changed, in the 24 years. But that probably took a long time for that. And so, yeah, we took a lot of delays on the ground to try to resolve those kind of issues. A lot of stuff in the air. The guy that had his shoe, the shoe, what was he called? The shoe bomber or whatever he was called. He tried to light his shoes on fire. A lot of that kind of weird stuff. But again, that's, shortly after 9/11, we got the Kevlar doors, and so that really put a barrier between us. Now it's kind of between the flight attendants and our security on the ground. We kind of make a phone patch and we make a decision whether, ultimately, we're responsible, but whether we're just going to land this plane. And sometimes you see that with erratic behavior in the back, and the pilot just, makes a decision that, based on the information from the flight attendant, that we can no longer filter. We're just going to
land it and
Yep.
get the person taken
Yep.
off and then head on.
Yep.
Flying's your first love, right? That's come out because it's been talking.
Yeah.
Have all these incidents, has that kind of sucked some of the joy out of flying for you?
It has. It has. The 9/11, the TSA, the security levels, the erratic passenger behaviors have gotten just chink away at the fun of it. The being in the airplane, the flying the airplane with another pilot is still such a joy. Flying over the country, I didn't do any international flying except one trip to Japan, but I love flying airplanes. I love looking out the window, even if it's the Gulf, flying over the Gulf, or flying up here in a little airplane coming home. I just love being in airplanes. I love flying airplanes. But all these little incidences and the corporate structures and the mergers and power struggles at all the different levels that impact the pilot's life. That all gets annoying. And as I'm 64 years old now, 65 is the mandatory retirement. I'm more than ready to be done.
Done.
I'm okay with that.
Move on.
I've flown enough and seen enough.
Yeah.
It's been a good career. But yeah, it's not as fun. Certainly not as fun as it was at LAB when I was 21 years old and flying an airplane with 4 or 5 people in it up and down the canal. That was the most fun in an airplane I'll ever have in my life.
So thinking back on that, because as you were talking about the security, I had a flashback to when my dad broke his back. I was in Juneau and saw him at the hospital, went out to the airport the next day, because at that point, before they had medevacs, the jet medevacs, they put him on Alaska Airlines flight.
Okay.
And so there's 3 rows of seats laid down towards the back. They've got a stretcher there, and they've got like a doctor and a nurse and my mom on the side. And they let me just walk on the plane. I went through the metal detector. Then you get to the top of it, and they're like, where's your ticket? It's like, oh, my dad's on the plane. Oh, okay, go ahead and go say goodbye. They just, I mean, never would have, I never would have gotten that close. So we go on there, and then also hearing the nurses and the flight attendants talking, and the flight attendants had told my mom that they're, not to make this sound bad, but like, we appreciate when there's a medevac because people can't smoke on the flights in because there's oxygen. And going back to that, we used to smoke on the flight. You'd have your smoking and your non-smoking right next to each other. It's like, but just the way that has changed in the last 40 years, as well as the security getting on there, what's allowed on a plane, has changed tremendously.
Yeah.
But the thing that got me thinking about that too is, did you have, because LAB used to do the medevacs out of Haynes, and sometimes it wasn't in the best of weather, and you were trying. Did you ever have an incident like that sometimes because I've talked to other LAB pilots, and they said sometimes that they pushed beyond what they normally would because they felt that if they didn't, the person that they were carrying might not make it.
Yeah.
Did you have situations like that?
Yeah. So we did a lot of medevac flying at LAB. One that we talked about earlier, the accident out Lutak Road. One of them, when I was on call, was a person that had been drinking, was down on the beach, and there was a derelict boat down on the beach, just laying over on its side, and it had a wooden ladder up on the side, and this guy that had been drinking was up on the ladder, and he slipped. And as he came down the ladder, bam, 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 he hit every rung with his chin and his face. And, of course, he was in the clinic, and they called me to fly him out. And we have a pretty good idea what the weather is, right? LAB flies all the time during the day. And it was bad. And I had to look at this guy in the clinic, and I remember who the nurse was going to be. And I had decided at that time that I'm not going to risk my life and the flight nurse's life for this guy. Not that I any ill will, but it could have been a pregnant person, right? It's not worth, because there are other opportunities to get airplanes up here. It just takes a little bit longer. So yeah, I decided at that time that I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to put 3 lives in jeopardy to get this person down sooner. So they made other arrangements, and later on in the afternoon he was able to fly out. It's a hard call, just like it's a hard call anytime you're in the airplane to turn around at Berners Bay, or to turn around when you get all the way down to T Harbor or wherever, Auk Bay in Juneau, and then Juneau socks in with snow or fog, and you got to come all the way back to Haynes. Same thing in the airliner when we're shooting an approach into Florida, Fort Myers, wherever it is, and the weather's bad, and you just can't land there. Or thunderstorms come across the corridor on the East Coast or Florida or wherever we are, Minneapolis. There's times when you have to make a choice, a decision, and that's why we're paid to make those decisions, is to say no, we're not going to go, and we'll divert to somewhere else. And I've spent a lot of nights in Fargo when I should have been in Minneapolis, or Fort Lauderdale when I should have been in Miami, and people make arrangements to get back. Those are hard calls.
You
They're
had
not fun
mentioned
calls to make.
you had mentioned that Leighton never second guessed your decisions on those.
Mm-hmm.
As you've moved up the ladder, have other people, as you've gotten to bigger airlines, have they second guessed those decisions, or is it pretty much universal that the pilot, or is there enough communication between you and headquarters or wherever that everybody's on board with the decision before you make it?
Fortunately, I've never been second guessed. My decisions, I think, are all sound, and based on two pilots, we come together and make a decision. If you remember, Sully Sullenberg landed on the Hudson. He was run through the coals, second guessing, by the FAA, all the other administrative groups, for why he decided to land an airplane in the river when he should have, could have gone back to Teterboro, should have, could have gone to LaGuardia, and he withstood all that pressure and stood by his guns for what he believed was the right decision. And in hindsight, it was. Obviously, nobody in the simulators could duplicate taking his condition and made it safely to another airport. But he had to make that decision on an instant to decide to land straight ahead in the river, and how I so admire him for how he withstood that pressure of being second guessed and grilled and challenged minute by minute by minute, every single decision he made along the way. It was awesome what he did, what he withstood. No, fortunately, I've never had to do that. Never had to stand in front of a chief pilot and explain my decisions.
So as we were talking earlier, and it's one of those things, the tank farm. Have you ever thought that how critical the tank farm was to your life?
Oddly, yeah.
Because if the tank farm's not there, the Haas family isn't in Haynes. So even if you come up and fly for LAB, you're not meeting your wife. If the tank farm's not there, Leighton Bennett's not here starting an airline. That one physical object there that was put there after post-war to feed fuel up to the base in Fairbanks was a huge part in your life.
I look back and my life is such a strange connection of variables, right? People look at me and my career and said, you've always wanted to fly airplanes, you're flying airplanes. From point A to point B in my retirement, there's a pretty straight line. But all these little things that happened along the way, that were choices of mine or not choices of mine, being kicked out of Embry Riddle, the tank farm, my father-in-law who enlisted in the Army, he gets assigned Haynes, Alaska. He comes out of Racine, Wisconsin in the Army, and he goes to Haynes, Alaska to work in a tank farm. It just all these little things that connected to make this possible. To me, meeting Kay at a basketball game absolutely turned my life around. And just so encouraging all along the way. It's a miracle. It's the miracle on Hudson. My life is the miracle on Hudson. I don't know how to explain how all these little things came together, and these wonderful people in Haynes that I have absolutely fallen in love with and have relationships with now that I met 40 plus years ago, that support me and encourage me and help me along.
I think it's
to come back here.
People that I've met through the store over the years, the number of coincidences and the number of stories similar to yours, that there's this, we all think we're going on this straight line.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a straight line. And the thing that I take from listening to your story that I really appreciate, and I hope other people do too, and this is, I'm going to diverge from that a little bit. Listening to an audiobook this winter, can't remember, my girlfriend was listening to it and I was doing other things and listening, and the author was talking about happiness and how most people they talk that when they get work's a grind, whatever they're doing is a grind, but when they retire, they're going to have this time to do something else. They're going to relax on the beach and they're going to be happy. They're going to be just sitting at home. They're going to be happy. And the author's take on that was, no, it's the challenges that we have in life and overcoming those challenges, setting ourselves a goal and accomplishing things. That's what brings us that true happiness. Mm-hmm. And looking at the divergence of your career, you know, you go to college and you're told, yeah, you better find a different job. And the difference that takes, you've overcome a lot of those. You said that you had issues at school, but you still put your nose to the grindstone, got that degree so you could fulfill your dream of being a pilot. Mm. Do you think that author's correct? That it is the challenges and overcoming those challenges that bring us happiness?
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly, I had a lot of help all along the way.
We all do.
For making this career possible. The guys that believed in me, that really had no reason to do it besides blind faith. Joe, the guy that had my first job in Gary flight instructing, let me come back and reset myself. Leighton, from a resume, now certainly I had to pass his check ride because I had to pass his Haynes people, right? Were ultimately had to believe in me for me to keep my job here. The people at Horizon Air that hired me when they probably had no business besides they just needed somebody at the time. But yeah, all these, without them, it wouldn't have happened. But yet their encouragement and then my able to push myself to accomplish little goals that made the next goal possible. My goal at LAB was not to be a Delta captain for an A320. You know, that was not my goal. My goal was to get to the next job, then to get to the next job. And as you accomplish those, you look back and I see a level of pride and satisfaction. You never really get to the end. So, I haven't had a chance to sit back and say, I've made it, right? Because you never really make it because we're still on our path, wherever our path is going. But there are periods when, like, it was never more fun flying than flying for LAB. On a nice day, getting people through, that was the most fun. And I had never had the most satisfaction of flying was probably times when I was a captain at Horizon Air and took a challenging situation with a challenging airplane, a Metroliner was, in the mountains or in the weather, getting those people through and to their meetings or to Grandma and Grandpa's house or home. That was really satisfying. Once you get into the major airlines, those are all good, and you go home feeling satisfied. But the highest highs were earlier, building upon that major airline job. Those were big, and if you can't look back on those, there's certain people that are born into an industry or a business or whatever. You think of Fords right off the top of my head. Not that they had it easy, but Fords were going to be in the business, right? In Ford Motor Company, and so you took this.
I tried not to be in the business.
No,
my goal was not to be part of the business.
Not to be part of Old Rudes.
No, I did not. When I graduated high school, I wanted to leave Haynes and hardly ever come back.
Yeah,
that was my plan, and didn't work that way.
You did go to school.
I went to college
down in.
Went to the University of Washington. And this is something I told people in the past that, kind of like you, I went down there because my dad wanted me to go into business. And I chose that because it was the sensible thing to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go into business. I wanted to do something else. And in my heart, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That's what I wanted to do. And so I got behind real quick in business classes down at the UW, and I was never I realized right off the bat with what you needed to get into the business school, I was not going to make it. And so it was like, time to start looking for what else am I going to do. And I thought, heck, one of my college roommates was in communications department. I was like, I'm going to go into communications. I'm going to go into broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And that first quarter out of my 2 classes, one of the professors, we had to do a visual presentation. You either get up in the class or you could record it, but you had to do an audio presentation to the class. And I was with 3 or 4 other people I didn't know before that class, don't know their names now, never talked to them after that. We put this video together. I was one of the speakers of it. The professor, when he was grading us, he flat out told me, he says, you do not have a public speaking voice, and he says you need to concentrate on writing. If you're going to be in journalism, it needs to be print journalism. I was like, well, crap, I hate writing. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
so that's that one person's opinion.
Right.
Totally threw me off that path. So I got my history degree. I worked for my uncle in Minnesota. Went back to Seattle, worked a couple jobs there, and they needed help at the store. I wasn't really happy with my life in Seattle. Decided to come home, see how that would work for a little bit, and 31 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah.
But going through that, I got to broadcast high school basketball games.
Did you really?
All 3 of my nephews and my niece,
Yep.
I got to broadcast all their home games, tournament games.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, his sophomore year, they won state, and Jeff Sharnbrough and I, who I grew up together with,
Mm-hmm.
we're calling state basketball tournament when Haynes wins the championship together.
In Anchorage.
Yeah. That was
That would have been
a
so
huge
cool.
highlight.
Yeah.
Huge highlight for me.
Yeah.
With that lifetime friend, somebody you grew up with passionate about Haynes, passionate about Glacier Bear basketball, watching my nephew on the court, Kyle Fossman, some of the other guys there, that you've seen them grow up, their families.
Mm-hmm.
Is it what I dreamed of? No, it was better.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that there's so many things I look at that put me in a place that wasn't what I expected or what I thought, but was better than what I expected.
It's taken opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they're not flashing green lights, like the opportunity to come here to LAB was not a flashing green light. If anything, it was a red light to stop, right? Everybody that I was talking to was telling me not to come up here. But I knew I had to make that. I had to come up here and just experience it, right? I'd been down before, right? I've gotten spanked before. I know what down is, and I can recover from that.
Yeah.
As long as you don't make the most worst, heinous of mistakes in your life, we can recover from most of that stuff. So I just wanted it. And then I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to make it happen. And I can't want to take tests, written tests. I can't want to do well on written tests. I just don't. So that wasn't going to happen. So I had to figure out another course, which would maybe longer than the straight, to make it happen. What do you got to do to make it happen? Make this store succeed, right? Make the grocery side succeed. What do you have to do to make it? Just make it happen.
Just got to keep showing up
Do
every
it.
day.
Show up every day.
Show up every day. No day's going to be perfect. You're going to have screw-ups.
Boom.
Things are going to happen, but just keep showing up and doing the best you can.
And not a single day goes by in my career can I look back from the morning until I'm back in the hotel room or I'm home and say, it was a perfect day. Something was missed in my daily routine of flying airplanes. Something was missed. But there's checks and balances, and we trap problems in the airplane, and so we catch them before they get to be issues, and that's why there's 2 pilots, highly skilled, highly trained. We have flight attendants that help us make decisions. We have dispatchers that help us make decisions. Air traffic controllers help us make decisions. But I can pretty much say I've never had a day when everything just went perfect. You just make mistakes, but you get through them. You don't let them crush you. You don't pout. You just say, okay, let's move on from here, and we'll get it done.
Yep.
And that's how you go. That's how you live. That's how you.
I think that's pretty much every profession. Everything we can do in life is just can't let them get you down.
No.
Any of those mistakes, we all make them. Just
Yeah.
how do we recover and move on to the next phase?
Yeah, I don't know how quarterbacks do it or pitchers do it. Sports guys are under intense.
Or even cornerback gets beat for a long touchdown.
Yeah.
You come back and you just got to man
You
up the
gotta
next play and
Yeah.
forget about that and come back and compete.
I am, and so I love sports, and I love how those athletes can do that.
Yep.
Or they're not around next year.
Yep.
Fortunately, in my business, I've had a lot of support, and I've been asked to come back year after year after year, and it's been a joy. And it's made all this possible. Our whole Haynes operation is possible because of the last couple of years of flying for me. I've had people, like you mentioned, my whole career. They say you're so lucky to do what you love to do. Well, in fact, there are no barriers to entry to be a pilot. Anybody can be a pilot. You can go down to the local school and take your tests and fly and become a pilot. It's the desire. It's how hard you want to make it happen that makes any career, right? Anybody can go out and start a grocery store or a sporting goods store if you're finance, but you've got to want to make it happen, and you've got to put in that work every single day to make it. And there is a lot of luck involved. Like, why, after 4 years of flying in and out of here, I didn't end up on the side of a mountain or in a riverbed. Just little things, little decisions along the way kept me, from having a catastrophe here. There are better pilots than I'll ever be that are on the side of a mountain or buried in the trees that have horrific accidents with airliners or have had their jobs, their airlines, their careers. Braniff guys, Eastern guys. There's thousands of pilots that are way better than me, way smarter than me, way just in every aspect that just didn't have the luck at the end of the day that I did. They lost their jobs for whatever reasons, and I have managed to piece this meal together for all these years. I'm very lucky. I'm really lucky. But I don't like it when people say that it was given to me or it was preordained or whatever. It's like, no, you had to make this happen. You had to make it in Haynes to survive in Haynes.
Takes a lot of hours.
It does.
It's not the easiest place to live or run a business.
No.
But
And
if you get up every day and you work hard enough about it, and you're nice enough to your customers and treat them well,
mm-hmm.
you can make it if you want to.
Yeah, but you got to be flexible. You got to take these variables and make the right decisions, and keep pressing on. Because I talk to people that I've known from the '80s that were here in the '70s, in the '60s,
Mm-hmm.
and Haynes has changed so much.
Yep.
From the lumber to the fishing to the tourism that came and went, and now is coming back. Haynes is changing, but the Haynes people, they're fighters, and the ones that stay here, the ones that want to be here, they go with the flow, right? And they've sustained all the cycles. Bart Henderson, he's been here through thick and thin, came here, I don't know his story as well as you, but I've known him since the 80s, and he just makes it happen.
I think to survive in Haynes, you have to be adaptable and resilient, are the two traits. If you can't adapt to things changing constantly, and if you're not resilient enough to put up with and to get through the downtimes, because there are going to be downtimes,
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to make it here. But if you have those two characteristics and you have a desire to do it, It's a great place to live.
And I think the people of Haynes support the people of Haynes. As much as there's bickering politically, you know, you were the mayor during the slide. I've never been so proud of this community. We're living in Minneapolis, listening every day to KHNS radio in Minneapolis, listening to the stories and the things that you were going through every day during a slide, how this community came together. And there's always going to be a political divide, but there's always a common bond in Haynes that allowed somebody like Layton to thrive, and Olruds to thrive, and Schnabels to thrive, and all these names that you can go down the list. People that have been here and made it happen. It's wonderful. It's hard. There's a wonderful people here.
That's all what you're talking about. There's that interesting difference. You can go to a borough assembly meeting and you can have people arguing opposite sides of an issue. But then if something bad happens to a family, they're doing a fundraiser, both of those people will be in the same line to buy a dinner or whatever. They're right there helping whoever it is. Or if they could be the person they're arguing against, they're there for the fundraiser for that person a couple weeks later. And so what you say is, yeah, there is that political divide, but when something bad happens, the community rallies like no place I've ever seen.
No. And you see events like that, like a hurricane or a tornado can go through any city in the lower 48. And they'll get a lot of media coverage, and there'll be a lot of people that'll come in and help and cut wood and stuff like that. And then they just all go back to their lives. There's people that are tied to the slide, you know, or all the slides that were all around, Lutech, everywhere. And they're still supporting people. It's still a common bond. And, you know, it's not something that we just move away from once the media leaves or the microphone's turned off. Haynes is still a group that comes together with a park down here.
Yep.
That my grandson played in this summer. It was wonderful. It's pretty cool. I love this place.
It's nice to see that third generation coming back.
Yeah.
You know, with both your kids here this summer, your grandson here this summer.
Yep. I want to go fishing.
Yep, go fishing. And he caught a fish.
He caught a fish.
Got a fish. That was awesome.
Yep.
So start building those memories, so he's going to want to come back too.
Yeah.
So as we wind this up, any last thoughts, Rick?
Not really, besides the global part of what Haynes has done for me. All the way up until appreciation of you in the slide. My life just turned around when I came to Haynes, and the people that I come and see, and we have so many things that we want to do when we come up here in the start of the summer, and it always ends up this last week visiting with friends, dinner with friends, closing up those loopholes for the year with hopes and prayers that we'll see everybody again. Next summer we go to church and we see your folks at church and the Schambroys at church, and we say, God willing, we'll be back here again next summer.
Well, as you're saying that, it kind of cracked me up, because the thought that the first time I saw you and Kay this summer was at the 4th of July, the picnic, Fireman's Barbecue, serving people, and Friday night you guys are serving people at the Legion. Yes. So you don't just come back here to sit back, you're giving your time and you're giving back to the community as well.
And it started with Frank and June, my in-laws.
Yep.
They were of course, Haynes was Haynes back then in the 50s. Everybody had to do everything, just like you in school. Everybody had to participate to have any sports teams or any of these events. Haynes is volunteers. And volunteers started with my in-laws, and Kay and I come back, and we plan our arrival at the 4th of July barbecue, and the Legion knows every Friday night we're going to be there working with them, because that's important. It's important to us to keep giving back to Haynes, because Haynes has given us so much.
Couldn't agree more. Yep. All right, well, I appreciate it, Rick. It's been great
having a conversation. It's always been a pleasure.
And learning more about your journey and time in Haynes. And looking forward to seeing you back here next summer.
I'll be back here in September
Oh, you're coming
to
back?
chase the silvers.
That's right. You're coming back coho fishing.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I'll
My
see
first
you
time in 40 some years.
40 some years back for cohos.
I can do it.
Well, let's make sure we got a bunch of coho for you.
I'll be after
Yeah.
it.
We'll see you in a month then.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep. Thanks, Rick.
Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening or watching to this episode of Doug Has Questions. Just a reminder, if you could help us spread the word, like, share with your friends, subscribe, leave us some comments. And if you have any ideas on sponsorship or ways that you'd like to support it beyond those options, please reach out to Douglas at DougHasQuestions.com. And thanks again for listening. Take care.